Menace is the best Star Wars movie
happens
of
in
the entire
space.
saga.
In space.
It is
You
in
are
space.
a rocket scientist.
Ahsoka Tano.
How are you explaining anything when you are
Darth
a rocket
Sidious
scientist?
All right, what's going on, Legion fans? Welcome to our second episode in the Star Wars Correction Saga. We are jumping into episode 8, The Last Jedi.
That's right. I'm ready for this.
What's going
No,
on?
I'm not introducing him.
You got
No.
That's your.
No, he doesn't
Oh,
get an
fine.
introduction.
Well,
No.
Can I introduce
Fine.
him?
All right, I'm
You
going to
introduce
introduce him.
him.
Fine. Like we said before, we cannot do this on our own. This is too
big of a job.
correction. Too much is going on in these films, and we need to have some people with us to help. So with us this week is one of my best friends, Andy Ross.
What's going on, Legion fans?
So Andy is here. Andy and I, just to give you a little bit of a background and his credentials, Andy and I grew up together. We bonded over our nerddom, and we love Star Wars. However,
Well, you love The Last Jedi, right?
You talking to me?
is I'm very
Oh,
concerned right now.
That's not what you bonded over?
We did not bond over The Last Jedi. Here's what I would say. We agree on 99.9% of comics, Star Wars, nerddom. This is the 0.1% where we are vehemently against each other.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that means that we're going to have a good time today.
Exactly.
As we go
are
through
going to have
this.
a very good time. So
Yeah.
before we jump into anything else,
Right.
before we do any of our normal work around the Carnage Report or anything else, I want to give Andy a chance to be able to talk just from a high-level perspective why he loves this film.
Okay, yeah, give us a summary, Andy.
All right, so I'll be honest. When I started, and the first time I saw this movie, I walked out and I was a little confused as how I felt. Right?
Exactly, and we can stop there. Good job. Great episode, everybody. I am so happy. Let's turn it off.
Case closed.
I had to go back and see it again, and on second viewing, I loved it. So the issue I had after the first viewing was it was not the movie I expected. And I think that's going to be the core of everything we talk about today is that this movie is very different than
It is.
anybody expected. And I think that it works phenomenally in that case, right? We were expecting Luke to come out and be a super BA Jedi and, kick some butt and go around and just see him, wreak havoc on the universe and the First Order.
Yeah, like in The Mandalorian.
Yeah,
Exactly. Just like the Mandalorian.
love it.
Right. Agreed.
Just do
It was
that.
a great scene.
Do that.
But Rian Johnson took a different tact here, and he wanted to show that it wasn't necessarily, it wasn't up to the Skywalkers to save the universe, that there were going to be more than just the key characters that come together, that those key characters were going to be the spark, like they say in the movie, the spark that starts the fire that
kills
is the
me.
resistance.
The spark.
Wait,
the
but-
spark kills me.
But isn't this the Skywalker saga?
Sure, and they're definitely involved. They're a big piece of that. Rian Johnson took this in a direction that many people weren't expecting, and I think was a great story in that it was going to be the general public, the little people that come together that maybe have the powers, like the kid at the end with the Force power who pulls a broom, right?
Right.
He is eventually going to grow up, and having seen the terrible things that happen on that planet that he was at near Canto Bight, we'll get into that later, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But he saw those terrible things and he wanted to do something about it, potentially, right? So it's something, him growing up and being in that, he can join the resistance and help fight for the good. It doesn't necessarily need to be the Jedi that are going to be the ones that bring balance to the Force. You've got a universe full of people, and they're all going to come together, potentially, and be able to help overthrow the First Order. It's not necessarily on the Skywalkers themselves. And Luke says that. It's, what do you expect me to do? Stand there by myself and face down the entire army?
Yes.
Now, we know he does that, which is awesome.
Right.
But
More of that.
he is, it's not all on his shoulders because he couldn't do it alone. If he was really there and facing down the order, we know what would have happened. Luke, go bye-bye.
I don't
All right.
I don't agree with any of that. Any
let's,
part of it.
let's jump into
But
it.
let's jump into
Let's
it.
jump into it, and we'll see as we go through the movie and we talk about it. We'll see how we how we match up. So here we go. Let's start with our Carnage Report. All right, so Carnage Report, we always go over how much they made, what the reception was. So Star Wars Episode 8, they had a budget of about $315 million, and they made good money. If this was the only Star Wars movie we're talking about here, they made good money by bringing in $1.3 billion. That was a good profit, but
that is not what they brought in on the first film. The first film, Episode 7, brought in $2 billion, and it brought $2 billion in on actually a smaller budget. The budget was only $300 million, so it actually made $700 million more in gross profit.
right.
But you can't expect the same response to a movie that is a sequel to, the Episode 7, which was the first Star Wars movie that came out in 15 years.
Empire Strikes Back?
Right, but those movies... So you had the first, Star Wars come out, blew everyone's mind. Then Empire came out, they wanted to see more, right? You had people
I would actually argue that Empire blew everyone's mind more than A New Hope.
Right, and I wanted to see more in Episode 8.
True, but not everybody did, right? Because all the people that went and saw The Force Awakens many times, not all of them were bought into the new characters, right? They wanted to see Star Wars because they grew up with it in 77, 78. They saw everything. They haven't seen anything. They got the prequels, which a lot of people were disappointed with the prequels. So they were hoping for something. Lor Santeca, this is beginning to make things right. Very first line of the movie.
The other thing that goes along with that is people didn't go out to see it multiple times like they did for Episode 7. Not because the fact that they didn't want to see something more, but because it wasn't a good film.
It was because it was not the movie they expected. I think if this was not a Star Wars movie, we'd be having a different discussion because...
Right, but it is a Star Wars movie.
Right.
But it is.
It had higher expectations from the fandom because they have been building their...
We can't even get through the Carnage report.
Let's
Report.
Let's keep moving.
Keep moving.
All right,
keep moving because your next point makes my point more.
Okay, so, almost. Cast, right? Same people came back. We had Mark Hamill returns, Luke Skywalker, Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia, Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley came back as Kylo and Rey, and then John Boyega and Oscar Isaac returned as Finn and Poe. Andy Serkis reprises his role as Snoke, and then we get some new people coming in as well with some new characters that we were hoping they would kind of build more into, including Kelly Marie Tran, who, again, my heart goes out to her because she was fine in her acting ability, in my opinion.
She was great.
Her writing was terrible, and so her character kind of got lost in what could have been a really good character, and then even more
lost in Episode 9.
Skywalker. Yeah,
she's a pointless character now.
Yeah, so she came in and she got to be a part of it. And I'm sad that it was a bad experience for her, and I wish that her character could have been driven in just a little bit more. But regardless, they all came back and reprised their roles for Episode 8. Now, when it comes to the response to the movie, we see the critic response came in at about a 90% in Rotten Tomatoes overall once the movie kind of leveled out.
Who are these people?
90%.
Right.
Who are these people?
Well, they're the paid critics that come in and write for...
This is why our podcast exists, because critics don't know what they're talking about.
Right, because the audience score came in at a 40% by the time it leveled out.
This is the lowest out of all, including the prequels, out of all of the movies, all of the Star Wars movies. It's the lowest rated.
Yeah, I think the prequels got a better rating after this came out because people went back and changed their votes.
I wouldn't blame
They
them.
were like, the prequels actually aren't that bad.
Comparatively,
right?
They look great.
Maybe? Yeah, I don't know. Well, I don't know about great.
From my perspective, from my lens, if we're doing a comparison,
they're great.
It looks great.
All right.
So now, if we're talking standalone film, we got a whole nother issue.
Yeah.
And so I think you can take away that, yes, it's low rated from the fans, but, comparing it to the prequels, so a lot of that is, fans going back and, bombing the reviews for whatever reason because they really did not like it.
Yeah.
So going back and reviewing it multiple times to bring it down. So
exactly.
So you can't always trust that number. It's low, for sure. Lower than, I would have hoped it was going to be because I thought it was a great movie.
Yeah.
But,
all right.
I would want to know how many of these critics are actually Star Wars fans. That's the other side. That
you never know when you're getting the right.
If you're reviewing this film as a critic, Have you watched all the others? How much Star Wars do you actually know?
They probably have watched all the others, but who knows how invested they are.
Exactly.
All right, well, let's jump into our actual correction and talk about what we thought they did well, what we thought they did wrong, and then jump into our verdict at the end. So here we go into our correction for Star Wars Episode 8. Okay, so Episode 8. There are quite a few shortcomings that at least that Logan and I have brought up.
Shortcomings?
Well, I'm trying to be.
How generous? Whose side are you on?
I'm trying to be kind to our guest here, who actually appreciates the movie.
You don't need to be kind to him. He can stand on his own 2 feet if he's going to make ridiculous statements like this being a good movie.
Yeah, but I want him to come back.
Right, so let's start at the beginning.
All right.
So
The
first
beginning.
Scene. Yeah, very
Andy,
first
you
scene.
are a rocket scientist.
Very first scene.
Andy, I'm not actually joking, Legion fans. Andy is an actual rocket scientist, and he's about to defend one of the most ridiculous scenes in outer space that we've ever seen. We are talking about a bombing raid
Right.
that
In
happens
space.
in space where you can't drop things in space and have them fall. It doesn't work like that. And you want to know how I know that? Because I cheated off of Andy in 12th grade physics class.
True story.
Wow.
So I know that it doesn't work like that, and he definitely knows it doesn't work like that.
So I got an argument there. But before we get to the bombs, the actual opening of the movie is I feel very powerful. You get the First Order coming in right away, right? And you're evacuating the base on Dakar. And you already feel that the Resistance is in trouble. You know it. It's very reminiscent of Empire when Empire comes.
Leaving Hoth.
Right, coming to Hoth.
Sure,
Right? So
sure.
first it brings you right in okay, we're getting a Star Wars sequel, right? Brings you right into the movie. So, and then of course then you've got Poe going, and he's got the humorous bit with Hux, which I really enjoyed. I know some people thought it was a little brash or on the nose. I laughed. I lost my mind in the theater.
I actually didn't mind that too much.
Yeah.
I will say I didn't mind that too much. I
personally,
minded everything after that.
Personally, it fell flat for me, but actually after talking to Andy at other times, he convinced me that it was actually pretty Han Solo-esque, which is what Poe's trying to be. It's Poe's kind of like the new version of Han Solo, so it felt very reminiscent of when they were rescuing Leia.
Right, and he's hitting the intercom and saying, "Oh yeah,"
and then he shoots it. And it's
how
like,
are you?
Yeah, that was that. You changed my mind on that one.
Yeah. So, and then of course it goes right into the action sequence, and right off the bat, it sets the tone that this is not going to be our main characters making the best decisions. That they're going to be faced with choices, and they're going to make wrong decisions, and we're going to have to deal with the consequences for those decisions, and that's what happens.
Yeah, but
in
they
the
made
first raid.
real wrong decisions.
Right,
Yeah.
I would agree, but you don't
Throughout the movie.
Yeah, throughout the movie, they made terrible decisions, and they had to deal with the consequences, and they lost a lot of lives because of it. But the story was built in a way that, based on those decisions, they had to react to them and try and fight back, even though they were, made poor decisions. Poe is one of the main examples of
So
that in this movie.
we're establishing bad decisions throughout the whole movie.
By the characters, yes.
By the kid.
Well, here's the deal.
So wait, just to clarify, let me do this again. So just to establish, the whole movie is a bad decision.
No.
Everything about it.
Not what I
Everything.
said.
The whole
Not what I said.
Well, so I don't mind characters making bad decisions in movies because you're right. Some of the most poignant lessons you learn in a movie is based off of a character's shortcomings. And we can relate to them because we also make mistakes, and so we see them make mistakes, and it lets you kind of bond with the characters. But my biggest grief is that I thought the whole movie was written so poorly in the pacing and in the character development that when they made bad choices, I just thought they were idiots. I didn't think that I could relate to them. Like it
Exactly.
I didn't feel any emotional connection to when Poe did that and chose to go against Leia every single stupid time because Leia should have just canned him. Like he wasn't learning from his mistakes. And it wouldn't have been allowed to go on that far and endanger that many people. It just didn't seem like this is somebody I want to care about.
Especially
I
in a
started rooting against him.
military.
And
Yeah, I started rooting against him. In fact, I was like,
Well,
"No, get him out of here."
resistance, military, it's, rebels, right? So people are learning, and you've got to come at this that we're seeing a chunk in time. So this is one story in the larger saga, right? So Poe and Leia have a history that, we see a little bit in The Force Awakens, and but off screen too. So we can't just assume that this is the first time.
You're trying to distract from bombs falling in space.
So I was trying to get back there.
You're
So-
trying to
All right,
distract from
let
this,
let him
sir.
go back. Let him go back. Let's hear.
Come
it.
on.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
All right. So the bombing run, very reminiscent of, say, like a World War II bombing run, right?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
That's the idea.
Yeah, except it's the future.
Right, that they're trying to instill in the audience's mind is that, okay, we're coming in like we're going to go bomb a giant ship, in World War II, what have you, right? So you come in, and I think it's a great action sequence. The TIE fighters, the A-Wings that are going at it. You've got the bombers or the MG-100 Star Fortress, which are designed to release these proton bombs in a sequence that use electromagnetic release in order to shoot the bombs out of the spacecraft. And so I understand your issue with physics, right? But you're not thinking of Star Wars physics. You're thinking of real life physics. In Star Wars, they have gravity, artificial gravity on their ships that we don't have now. And we go out in space, we're floating 0G. But on Star Wars ships, they've got that gravity there. So when we see Rose's sister, I don't know her name in the movie, but she falls to the bottom just like the bombs are going to fall out, right? So that artificial gravity is pushing them, one, and the electromagnetic release is shooting the bombs out and sequencing them so they don't bump into each other on their way down.
There is no way. That is, I hear you on the artificial gravity in the ship, but they dropped them like there was no gravity in space. The way that they fell out of the ship, there is absolutely no way that they fall that way once they hit space.
Well, there is no gravity in space, right? I mean, kind of, but it doesn't matter for this discussion. There's no wind resistance.
Yeah, you were exactly right. There is no gravity in space.
There's
so
no-
you're making my point. Let me reverse that. They are falling as if there is gravity in space.
Right, they
They
were
are
shot.
falling. They
Thurton's-
were not.
Thurton's third law, whatever, force in motion
Whose
is going to
third
stay.
law?
Newton's.
You said Thurton's.
Newton's third law. The object in motion is going to stay in motion, right? So we launch it out of the ship. There's no resistance, pun intended, no resistance on the bomb. So it is going to continue until it hits something, right?
Okay, all right. Let's move past the because we can stay on
That's
bombs and ships forever. I've got to mediate
I'm gonna,
this thing.
I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna mediate
bomb.
this thing.
I'm gonna bomb his ideas.
Hey,
here
in
is
the
what's
same
gonna
way,
happen.
the same way it bombed in the audience's eyes.
Exactly.
Oh, all right. Let's jump into how we felt Luke was depicted here in this episode. Let's talk about that. What we thought about Luke. I know, Andy, you have a lot of really good insight into what you thought about Rian Johnson's movement in the character. So let's hear about that.
Yeah, so Luke, granted, the very first scene we see Rey is handing Luke the lightsaber and pick up directly from The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I admit is a little jarring with Luke taking the lightsaber, tossing it over his shoulder.
Yeah.
It's like, oh wow. Right there it sets the tone that, okay, this is not going to go the way you think it's going to go.
Oh,
And
he said that.
Just the same thing Luke says, right? It's not the character we're expecting. It's not the Jedi, the master Jedi that we expected. He was going to come out of this temple where he was hiding and defeat the First Order single-handedly. He is a hermit. He is struggling with the decisions and actions that have happened to him over the last 30 years. And so we see this Jedi who is reserved and cut off from the Force. And I think that is a great take. It's one that the audience was not expecting at all. And Rian Johnson, he took a real risk by showing Luke in that way. And even Mark Hamill was quoted saying that he didn't like the Luke that was depicted on screen.
Exactly. And that's the problem. So here's my point, is this entire, I'm not even just talking about 7, 8, and 9. I'm talking about 1 through 9.
Yeah.
This is Skywalker. We're supposed to be seeing the evolution and all of the characters and the whole story being about the Skywalkers. To change that in episode 8 changes everyone's perspective of all of the movies.
So
it ruins the entire storyline because you're to look at how their family has dealt with all of the changes, interactions with the Force, the good and darks, the good and the dark side. You're supposed to see all of that. That is what the story is about.
Right, but you're making an assumption that Luke was going to be the main focus of the
No.
sequel trilogy.
No, I'm not. I'm making the point that it needs to have been
It should have been
related
Ben.
to Skywalkers, and it should have been
It should have been Ben.
But Ben was the
should
main
have been
character.
No, he should have been the main focus.
He was one of the main focus. His story with Rey, granted, we can get to that too, where they were communicating via. We find out in The Rise of Skywalker, it was a Force dyad, so they had this connection that Snoke started to connect their minds and kind of get them feel like that they understood each other and that they were connecting and that they could turn each other to both the light side and the dark side. And so the story was very much about Ben or Kylo in this movie. So I think if there was that Star Wars, the Skywalker story was there. It just wasn't what fans were expecting.
And I don't have a problem with the Force dyad. I actually don't have an issue with that. What I have an issue with in the Force dyad is that they're able to pass things or pass.
That's the next movie.
No,
I don't want to get into that yet.
Before you even get to the lightsaber, you saw water.
Well, she gets water. Yeah, water comes
through
because Kylo's there
all
with
the way
water.
across the galaxy in this Force dyad. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that
That
actual
is
matter
insane.
can transport through.
And so my point is this entire storyline should have been actually focused on, and if we're gonna do Ben and Rey, which I'm not even sold on doing Rey at all because she's a garbage character. But if we're going to do Ben and Rey, we need to dig more into their interactions with the light and the dark. We need to dig more into how they interact with each other, and then also in 9, which we're not going to get into yet, what actually happens once we find out more about who Rey is.
So I understand your
Which
point.
clearly Rey is somebody, because it's ridiculous to believe that she's nobody.
Yeah, or just let her be nobody. And I know that goes into 9 a little bit. Just let her be nobody.
Which was your point, which she should have been nobody.
Right,
Right,
and that's
agreed.
fine.
If I'm
she
going to
should have
argue
been.
your side for a second,
Yeah.
for this to continue and for this storyline to work and for 8 to work in the whole series, she needed to be nobody.
Yeah.
Yep,
I
I agree.
with that.
In episode 9, they kind of rolled that back
Right.
because of the reaction, the fan reaction to 8. They said, let's bring in
J.J. Abrams.
J.J. Abrams again, and bring the story back to the Skywalker story that you wanted to see, right? And maybe it didn't close the way you wanted. And getting into 9 now, but I liked the fact that Rey was nobody, right? It really spoke to the idea that the whole theme of the movie that Rian Johnson was going for, that anybody can have an impact. Rey, this scavenger from Jakku, she had to fend for herself for years, and now she is thrust quickly, as you've discussed on your previous one, the timing, right, in The Force Awakens. She's in this for like a week or two before she is thrust onto the scale. Now she is on Snoke's ship facing the supreme leader, thrust into that, and she is no one. She has the ability to determine and to impact the events of galactic proportions, even though she is no one. I think that is a huge message to people watching the movie, is that you don't necessarily need to be somebody's son or daughter or some big celebrity to be able to go out and make change in the world. If you believe that you can go out and do it, go do it. You can do that. I think that's the message that Rian Johnson was going for, and I think that the audience didn't really either pick up on it or they just didn't appreciate it because of the idea that it wasn't what they wanted.
And that's a fine story. That is a great story. And I hear you.
He said it right there. Great story, folks.
That is a fine... No. That is a fine story. But it's not this story. That is not what's... We've had 1 through 7 set up for the Skywalkers. That is what this is about. You don't then change it in episode 8. You make your own series. You make your own saga. You go and do that on your own, but you don't do that on my dime. My dime is to see the Skywalkers. And let's talk about my dime. Let's talk about my time, actually, because here's the thing that we went back and you actually fact-checked on. Episode 7 is 1 week long, okay? So Legion fans, bear with me because we got to go and do timeline. And if you haven't listened to our last podcast, go back and see our podcast on episode 7 because you're going to get some interesting things on timeline. First thing, episode 7, 1 week long. We gave a month. It actually is only 1 week long. So we've known Rey for 7 days in episode 7. Episode 8 happens over the course of only 3 days. And you want to talk about being lost on an audience, the timeline and how long they're actually going through this process of literally just running away from the Empire? 3 days. That is ridiculous.
Maybe 4.
Maybe 4. So we're
We
talking
give them 4.
over the course. We have known all of these characters who are new.
2 weeks.
Not 2 weeks. 11 days. 11 days at most. So Rey has no training whatsoever until she meets Luke.
I mean, no Force training.
No Force
Right,
training.
no
No
ability to
Jedi.
actually
No formal
use the Force.
Jedi training.
Right.
Okay?
Correct.
She meets Luke, day 1. She's just chasing Luke. This entire movie is about chasing. Like, is this tag and one person is running away from the other? This is crazy.
Oh, but listen, she watches him milk an alien for green milk.
On day 1.
Oh,
Day
that's
1.
what I'm
That's
saying.
day 1. Yeah.
Well, that's a lesson
What's
in
that
itself.
teaching us?
How to milk an alien.
How to milk an alien.
That's
Great.
that's important.
But you gotta love the character, or the animals, the creatures that they show.
Oh
Actually,
my gosh.
actually,
Oh my gosh.
I don't have to love that creature at all. That was disgusting.
That was
Right,
gross.
but,
really
but they
creepy.
always include something in Star Wars.
You're
You know,
exactly
the
right.
Wampa,
So,
the Rancor.
I'm not
yeah.
even. I don't even really have a problem with that. My problem.
I kind of do.
My problem and issue is her actual formal training is 1 single day. And don't get me wrong, it's intensive training on that day. But Luke trains her for 1 day on the light and the dark, and she dives right for the dark. We know that.
Yep, she enters into that cavern and sees what's,
He
even though he
says
warns her not
he's
to.
never seen anyone go to the dark like that, ever. And that is all we get. That is all of her training.
And then she leaves.
And then she leaves.
I think you're overselling it a bit. 'Cause
I am
you're
not
saying-
overselling it. I am underselling it, if anything.
Well, yeah, that's what. Well, no, you said it was very intensive. Luke was only going to give her 3 lessons, and we only see 2 on screen, right? That the Force doesn't belong to the Jedi, right? It exists, right? So the fact that the Jedi feel they own it and control it,
Right, that was an arrogance thing. of
arrogance
theirs,
for
yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And the Jedi. The second lesson is that the Jedi, their history is failure. They allowed Darth Sidious to rise at the height of their power, right? So
Right.
those are the 2 lessons we see.
No,
So-
and then the third is that they need to die.
So they don't actually show the third one on
The
screen.
third is that they need to die. But my point being,
Yeah, the third lesson.
you're missing the whole point.
The third lesson was, I mean, apparently everything, because she became an expert Jedi.
Apparently, the third.
I
yeah,
got to get me that third
Apparently,
lesson.
she became a grandmaster overnight. like this is ridiculous.
So it was a deleted scene, by the way, the
delete-
third one. They cut it because it didn't fit with the theme of the movie.
Right, because it
What?
made
Yeah.
it made the movie make sense.
Like, is there
Did
anything
it make the movie
here?
make sense?
It was quickly. It was Luke had fire set on the island, and he told Rey that there were these bandits coming, and they killed the caretakers that were there.
Yeah.
And that they
The
shouldn't
fish heads.
Yeah, that they shouldn't interfere because it was just part of their process. And Rey just ignored him and ran to him and helped, and it was really just the caretakers having bonfires or whatever. And the lesson was that Luke wanted to make sure that she had that empathy to go save people, even though she was told not to.
So here's the thing.
But
That actually isn't the third lesson because it doesn't exist. It only exists in a deleted scene. And the third lesson is that the Jedi needed to die in actually what we saw. Let the Jedi end. Let the Empire win. Because
No,
that's
no.
what I would have rather
That's
seen in this movie.
he's not saying let the Empire, the First Order, win. He's saying
Well,
the
he
Jedi.
kind of is.
Well,
the Jedi
what
need
he's
to end.
saying.
No, I'm saying, Logan, you are.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm saying
Oh,
that.
yeah, you
I'm
are.
100%
Luke
saying
is
that.
not saying that.
No, but he's saying that they should essentially just step back and do nothing.
Right. He's kind of the way that Rian Johnson developed Luke's character in this movie was that he has become jaded. He's fallen back. He's almost in a defeatist mentality, which is why Mark Hamill pushed back so much, because if you watch interviews with Mark Hamill, he was like, no, well, Luke might get discouraged for a little bit, but then he'd pick himself up and he'd pursue the Jedi way, and he'd believe in that. But the way that Rian Johnson progressed his character was that no, he has given up and he's believed that it should just go away.
Right.
Which
And
is wrong.
In the 30 years, though, since we've seen Luke,
Right.
he has gone through so much that we don't see. He's created a new Jedi Order and then have it burned to ash.
Then
by Kylo
show
Ren.
more of that.
Yeah.
Then show more of that. They
So-
don't show enough.
Exactly, and that's the problem. Is this was not the story you wanted. You wanted to see Luke's new Jedi Order. You wanted to see maybe the fall of that Jedi Order.
Of course.
I agree, and I think that there is potential for that storyline going forward in the Star Wars
Right,
universe
we'll get to
now.
that. We'll get to that. We'll get to
We'll
that.
talk about
But
the end.
I lost my train of thought.
Because you've lost.
so
Because I've used
this is
my
a-
Sith mind tricks on you.
Wait a minute.
So this is another example in this movie of bad choices being made and shown. It wasn't necessarily in the movie, but Luke made these choices. He ended up as a hermit on Ahch-To, right? And which is why we see our favorite little green friend show up, Yoda, as a Force ghost, and tell him, "I told you to pass on what I learned, not just all of the Jedi training, but the failure. That was the biggest thing, right? The biggest teacher is failure. And had you passed that on and shown that you can fail and then come back from that, it would have taught so much more." And so that was the whole idea of the Jedi. So the Jedi failed, but they never came back. They never rose above their failure after Sidious.
Let's talk about these bad decisions. Let's talk about these bad decisions because all we saw away from Luke and Rey now is bad decision after bad decision after bad decision.
Right, without really. I mean, I know it did. Obviously, it brings about an end. But I didn't sense any within the mistakes. I didn't sense there was no we've learned from it or we're growing from it or it's creating an opportunity for us to then make the right choice. And a lot of times in good storytelling, they make a bad choice, it creates a consequence, and then they're given the opportunity to then make a good choice to help them learn from it and grow from it and bring about a better result.
So I would disagree with that. Is we see that with Luke, with Yoda. Yoda comes and teaches
we're talking
him
about the
that
resistance,
lesson.
though.
No, I'm
yeah.
shifting
I'm
over
not-
to the
yeah,
the
I
resistance
agree.
here.
In general.
I agree
Yeah.
I agree that Luke did because then he decided to
After
sacrifice
30
himself.
years.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
wait,
Where was Yoda?
where was Yoda
Why
for
didn't Yoda
30
come and
years,
talk to him
Andy?
After all that time.
30 years!
Well, and also, and real quick with Yoda, he can create lightning to burn down the Jedi tree. If he can do that, why aren't Force Ghosts
What?
coming in armies and taking
Right,
out the First Order?
right. I mean, and
There's
we've got
hundreds of Force
we've
Ghosts
got a
from the Jedi.
precedent. We've got a precedent for this, actually, in
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings, Return of the King.
Oh, yeah.
You could easily have a similar
Bring 'em in,
situation
bring 'em
with
in.
Force Ghosts.
So the
Firing lightning. This is also this is the first time where lightning works.
The only time we're
This is the only time where lightning works.
I don't know what you mean.
Well,
This is
let
the
me-
only
let me-
time where
let me-
force lightning works.
let me break it down for you. Oh, no, wait. We'll do that
In the next one.
Episode 9.
Hold
we
on,
talk
hold
a lot
on.
about Force lightning. But Yoda does use Force lightning, or some kind of lightning, to destroy the tree. But why, if they can control the elements, why don't all the Force Jedi ghosts come back and take out the First Order?
So because again, we're going outside of the movies here. Canon is that the Force ghosts are one with the Force, right? So they're able to materialize themselves to come back in key instances when needed, right? So that was a point that Yoda was able to create a lesson for Luke, so that he was able to then influence his decisions later on in the movie.
So you're saying when Starkiller Base wiped out that whole line of planets, the Force ghosts were not needed?
Yeah, I guess not.
Wow, those are some sucky
That's
Force
yeah.
ghosts.
Force ghosts have force. If you want to talk about the little people and caring about the little
Yeah,
people,
man,
they
oh,
don't
man.
care about the little people at all.
They should have come and rained Force Ghost fire on the First
That's
Order.
exactly right.
So
This is why the Jedi suck, man.
Yeah, well, why they have to go, I guess.
This is
Luke
why
was
they
right.
gotta go.
Luke was
He's
right. All right, well, anyway, going back to the rebellion or the
Bad
resistance
decisions.
making bad decisions, there really wasn't a lot of there were a lot of repercussions to the bad decisions, but I feel like there wasn't very many opportunities for these people that we're supposed to be growing to care about have a chance to redeem themselves by making choices that would would help them get out of the consequences that they're in, or help them like rectify the consequences.
Or have a point. Like, why are we watching this? Why is this the story we're watching where they're all making bad decisions and we're having to watch?
Well,
and there's no good decision for like redemption.
Well, so let's talk specifics because I'm sure you're talking about the Canto Bight mission, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's one of them. I mean, Poe didn't listen to Leia like the
entire movie.
Well, and every time he did something wrong. Well, yeah, he makes the right decision eventually at the end after he stranded the entire Resistance on a planet, and Haldo has to...
And exposed that stranding.
Right.
Like, they were planning on being stranded on a planet.
Yeah, sure. But then Haldo has to sacrifice herself and an incredibly important ship to the Resistance by light speeding through a bunch of First Order ships.
Awesome scene, by the way.
Oh,
awesome
super
scene.
cool.
Yeah, great
really,
scene.
really neat.
Great scene.
I loved that.
No issue with that other than, like, how is this not happening more?
Well, but we've talked. There's a reason why.
We've talked more about why,
yeah,
but
so they plot courses to make sure they don't. I'm sure it does happen, but not to this degree where you would.
Oh yeah, I mean,
line.
and an
or you're saying using it as a
absolutely
tactic.
amazing cinematic scene. Yeah, I'm surprised it's not used as a tactic more often.
Also,
what I'm saying.
the cruiser was a giant cruiser, right? Like hundreds and hundreds of people were on the cruiser. So it's a
Fair,
very large, expensive machine that they were sacrificing.
Right,
so
and it's also not one person sacrificing. If it was in any other situation, you'd be killing hundreds
or thousands of lives.
Well, yeah,
right?
except unless you've already evacuated. Everyone's evacuated the ship, and then they turned around and they kamikaze it.
Right, but going forward, they call this the Haldo Maneuver, right?
Which is awesome.
Right,
Yeah.
so we know that it isn't really done, or hasn't happened before, at least in the short history, because that they name it after this moment in this movie.
Right.
Yeah. But it was so. I remember that moment in the theater, and it happened. And I don't know about for you guys when you were there, but like the dead silence that occurs just because they cut all the sound. But then everyone in the theater was just like
holding their breath.
Yeah,
right.
It was like it was awesome. It was a really that was.
I will say that is one of the coolest.
Yeah,
that is one of the coolest scenes in the whole movie.
Doesn't save the movie.
No, not at all. No, not even close.
So I think I'm going to agree with you here. Back to the Resistance is
Ooh.
I think the Canto Bight completely did not need to happen.
No,
not at all.
Right, and it shouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
right, because it was a bad decision.
Right.
Yes.
Had Poe followed orders and the chain of command, the Resistance would have continued on as they were, burning fuel, loaded up the transports, and snuck away to Crate while the First Order just followed the big ship and they just went on their way.
Right.
And they would have snuck, they wouldn't have lost all the lives that they lost. They would have been hidden and holed up, and they wouldn't have had the big battle at the end because First Order wouldn't have known they left.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So I agree, but that decision that Poe made there is a Star Wars decision, right? He's like, I'm the hero, I have to be the hero, so what do heroes do? They figure out a way to take out the tracking system that's following us, right? We think, granted, he thinks he knows that they figured out this, light speed tracking device that the First Order, they don't actually know that, right? So they're assuming that that's how they're being tracked, so this new tech. So they're like, oh, we just got to go disable it. We'll do that. Boom, we escape away. That is had that happened and that played out like that, that would have been a typical Star Wars movie. Right? It would have been the heroes making the decision to save the day, and boom, it happens. But this, I think, is even more consequential in that they make this decision, and there's a cost, right? They lose a lot of lives because they thought they were doing something better.
Right. And I have no problem with characters making bad. Like I said before, that's part of getting to know a character and enjoying a character arc. Is when they make mistakes and they learn from it and things like that. What I have a problem with. And I don't even have a problem with the whole theme on the casino planet where it was supposed to be like, well, there are still hurting people in the galaxy who need the Force or who need that hope in their lives. That's great. It didn't have to be it could have been like a fraction, 25% of how long it took for them to be on that casino planet and do nothing but run with these stupid horse creatures across the beach forever. And have nothing really happen out of it.
I will admit the pacing in that scene was a little off.
It was so bad.
The pacing in just that scene, the pacing in the whole movie's off.
Well, yeah, but the casino scene was just. I mean,
the casino scene is the worst.
Accepted as just the biggest like
waste of time,
dead space in a movie.
Right,
yeah.
but they're like you said, they're showing that the animals, the horses that they saved are being mistreated. That the people profiting off of this don't care about the little people. That they're spending the money and they're selling the weapons to both the dark side and the light. That
Right.
they don't care,
Right.
right? And that brings us to actually the Codebreaker, right? One of what
Yeah,
I would
Benicio del
consider the biggest villain in the movie is the Codebreaker, because he doesn't follow a code of ethics. Is he does whatever is best for him in the moment. Like, hey, you're gonna pay me to come help you break onto Snoke's ship? Fine, I can do that. We'll get you there. Like, oh, we got caught? Oh, you told me that all your people are sneaking away your ship, so I'm gonna give them that information, and then I'm gonna get off scot-free with a payment, and, you know, whatever happens to you, yeah, whatever happens. He said, and he said this as he left, he's like, you hit him now, or they hit you now, you'll hit him back later. And Finn's just like, well, maybe, because, like, I'm about to die here. They're literally about to execute me. So probably not me,
Not
but
me
maybe
personally.
the other Resistance folks.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
There
I hear
were-
what you're saying,
Yeah, there
but
were a
it
lot
doesn't
of
work.
good
It doesn't
elements.
connect. I hear what
Yeah.
you're trying to get at with like this overarching ethical dilemma that people have to dig into. But it just doesn't fit. It is too clunky, and they do it across too many broken up storylines.
And because of storytelling, like because of clunky writing, like,
Right.
It just didn't. And like I can appreciate that Rian Johnson's decisions, though they might not have been how I would have chosen in episode 8 to go. I can appreciate that the themes were good themes, and that the themes could have tied into the Star Wars universe. But I would argue that they didn't, and that they fell short, and that he didn't capitalize on what he should have capitalized. I know it shouldn't all be fan service, because we know how that turns out. It's called episode 9.
Right.
But if you have zero fan service and you just tear apart everyone's love for every character and do what most fans would consider a disservice to those characters, you're going to alienate your population.
And it's not even just zero fan service, because he does all of that, but then he makes horrible decisions about other pieces,
Yeah.
about the bombing raid at the beginning, about the casino scene, about then Leia. And like, let's get to Leia now.
Wait,
at this
Leia in
point.
space?
Leia in space.
Leia
Now,
in
you can fight with me on
space.
these bombs and give me all this different stuff about how they were projected into space and
Leia was
fired.
projected into space.
Leia was literally shot into space, sucked into the vacuum of space by a rocket that blew up her bridge. And somehow she saves herself by Mary Poppins through space to get back into the bridge.
So I would argue the rocket blew up the window of the bridge, and then
Fair.
the atmosphere
Fair.
blew everybody off the bridge.
Fine. It
So-
pulled her into the vacuum of space.
Sure.
She should be dead immediately.
Yeah, except she was trained to use the Force by her brother.
Right, but she would no.
Not that way.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she was.
Not
So Luke-
no. And so wait.
Luke
I got
flew
it. I got
into
it.
space?
At some point in her training, she was just thrown into space.
No.
So
Of course
then,
not.
how did she learn to do this?
Because she was trained to use the Force, right? So the Force is a power that she can call on in times of need, right? So in this instance, you know, this is very similar to, say, Rey at the end, right? Where,
Don't go.
Right.
Don't you do it.
Where I know-
Don't you do it.
I know that you love Rey lifting the rocks at the end.
She has 1 day of training, Andy.
Not even, because she had to prep and leave.
Right.
She had 1 day of training, and somehow she can lift all these rocks. She is somehow more powerful than Luke when he is on Dagobah and can't lift his own X-Wing.
So
And he was trained by Yoda?
So both of these situations, Leia and Rey, are very similar, right? Leia is trying to save her own life, preserve her own life. Rey is seeing everyone she cares about, everyone she knows in these movies, and they are, you know, being hunted by the First Order. If she doesn't get them out, they're gonna die, right? So she is summoning the Force in a fit of strength, like very Mama Bear-esque, right? Like your kid is trapped under a car, so you summon unbelievable strength in order to lift up the car. That's what she's doing. She's pulling on the Force in order to lift the rocks up to let everybody free.
Okay, I have a question. Why was Luke in such a rush to get off Dagobah?
To go save Han and Leia.
Oh wait, all the people he cared about were about to die, and he had to lift something, and he couldn't lift the X-wing. He
Yeah.
was in a Mama Bear situation. I mean, granted, he's a Papa Bear, but he had to pull that thing out of there, and he had everyone he cared about in the galaxy, life on the line. He had to get there. Why couldn't he do it?
I would say it's different.
How is
The
it
level is
different?
because he had a vision, right? So he doesn't know, and Yoda tells him that, hey, just because what you're seeing doesn't mean that's going to come
He
true.
didn't listen to Yoda.
Right,
he freaked out, and
but-
he put all of his effort into lifting that.
So
In his mind, that was real.
yeah, agreed that Luke thought it was real, but Yoda was there telling him, "Hey, this is not real. Like you can't trust the visions you see in the Force because it's so difficult to interpret. Even Jedi Masters back in early episode 1 through 3 had difficulty, seeing the future.
So, but if he agreed with Yoda, then after Yoda pulled the X-wing out, why did he leave? If he agreed that Yoda was right, that well, no, you can't trust the visions, why didn't he stay and complete his training?
Because
He thought it was real. And he wanted to get out of there.
I 100% agree with you, Greg, but the still point here is we've known Rey 10 days. 10 days. She is able to do more with the Force than anybody that we've seen in that amount of time.
Yeah, and Luke was
This is
trained by
insanity.
Luke was trained by Obi-Wan and Yoda.
This is ridiculous.
Right.
She can't do all of this.
So if you're going to assume that Rey had all this training that we didn't see when she was...
she didn't even get a montage.
Well, when she was... So if we're going to assume that she had a lot of training while she was left on Jakku and had to survive, right? Then we can very easily entertain the thought that Obi-Wan trained Luke more than just that one time when he wore the blast shield, right? So he was with Obi-Wan for quite a while with a lightsaber. Obi-Wan was training him in things. We saw one instance of that. And then Yoda trained him as well for much longer than Luke trained Rey.
right, but we never saw Yoda introduce a lightsaber at all. And so then Luke runs off to fight Vader, Darth Vader, who, we know in Rogue One is at the height of his power and destroying rebels left and right. And one of the coolest scenes again in Star Wars, coming down the hallway. So,
Yeah.
But Luke faces that Vader, and just what you said, Greg. The only time we see him use a lightsaber before that is fighting the little floating droid, and he gets
Yeah, but he
getting shot.
loses.
Yeah, but
He loses
lost
in
to
that
Vader.
movie.
Lost to Vader.
He lost into Vader.
Yeah,
His
but we're-
arm was chopped
And
off.
we're not talking about lightsaber skills. We're talking about Rey's ability to lift an entire
She-
half a mountain.
She lifted an entire landslide. Which arguably would be more than than the X-Wing. And not just that, the X-Wing is one object. This is so many different individual objects of different weights that she has to be able to focus different levels of force onto.
Let's move on to, we got a few more hot topics here. One being the Snoke and throne room scene. So the Snoke and throne room scene has come into a lot of kind of discussion and frustration for fans because outside of the movie, there are some extra text and some kind of behind the scenes writings about Snoke, and you can find other things about Snoke. But in the movies, we saw very little about him. He was pretty much just a a projection in the first movie, and then in the second movie, we got to see more of him, and people were excited. Andy Serkis is great. Even though I don't think anybody really liked his design too much. It was kind of a weird design, but
I loved him in the first movie.
Yeah, he was
I
great.
thought in the first movie, the ominous, gigantic
don't know who he is.
throne and like
I thought he was that big.
projection. I thought he was that big too.
And I was super excited.
I was
and he's a
really
normal dude
interested.
that's just all kind of shriveled up. Anyway,
Yeah.
but they come into the throne room, and we're getting to see more and more. And he uses his Sith powers on Rey to make her tell him information. It's like, man, this guy's gonna be sick. And then we have Kylo Ren guard and hide his emotions in such
Doing
a way.
the one thing he couldn't do.
One thing he can't do. We've seen him throw tantrums. Stormtroopers won't even go in the room when he's having a tantrum. And he somehow can hide his emotions from a Sith Lord who's been trained by Sidious, who's been trained by Plagueis.
And we're not even sure. He may be Sidious to some extent.
Right, he might even be somewhat of a clone of Sidious. Regardless, he's been trained by all this. He is way more powerful and way higher in the level of force sensitivity than Kylo is. And yet Kylo can deceive him to the point of just slicing him in half on the throne. Now, that was like the coolest death.
It
Ever.
was awesome.
Super cool. But the way they've been playing Kylo, and I know that Rian Johnson is different than J.J. Abrams, and so without having that director continuity, it is going to suffer a little bit. But even the way Rian Johnson, but even the way Rian Johnson was writing Kylo, nobody wrote Kylo Ren as stable. Nobody wrote him as able to control his emotions.
Absolutely not.
Right, but they explain in this movie that a lot of his conflict is coming from Snoke.
Sure.
And his questioning the dark side and feeling like he's not good enough. And so he finds out in that scene that Snoke was doing all this to him. So
Which is an
so he
even
throws a
greater
tantrum.
reason why he wouldn't be able to control his own
Yeah, he should be
emotions
slicing
at
the
that
floor,
moment.
right,
He
yelling
would
at the
be he would
guards.
be losing his mind.
Yeah.
right, but it throws him into a rage at that point. But the Sith feed off rage, right? So that is the emotion that centers them. Unlike a Jedi, where rage would unleash them. And granted, I understand we've seen him act out before, but the rage that he is feeling, I took it as that it centered him and allowed him to betray his master. Granted, and that is not unheard of. The Sith, that's how they become the Sith.
Right,
Oh,
that's how
sure.
they become the
Betraying
new
is not
master.
the problem.
No, I have no
Just
issue with the
how he
betrayal,
did it.
but how he was able
Yeah.
to.
And-
There's no way he is able to mask his emotions in that moment.
Well, and the fact
he
that
he hasn't masked his emotions one time to that point. Not once.
Well, and the fact that we didn't even get to see Snoke step up and use a lightsaber. Like, we didn't even get to see him
We
get up
didn't see him
and
do
fight.
anything.
Like,
we saw
come
him
on.
we saw him influence Rey,
We
and
got-
that was it.
We got more out of Dooku in the movie.
Right.
That's sad.
Right.
I thought it was awesome because it pulled you think Snoke is going to be the big bad, and then all of a sudden you've got Kylo come out of nowhere. Snoke's gone, now Kylo is now the new big
But
bad.
then you don't really they don't set him up as the big bad. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
nobody
he
believes
takes
he's
over
the
the
big
final
bad.
order.
Nobody
the First
believes
Order,
that.
But he doesn't even come off as like, is he really the big bad? Like,
Right.
I didn't believe in it for a second there that Kylo was then going to be the big bad.
Right.
Well, okay, well then what did you think was going to happen? At the end of the movie, Kylo is now supreme leader, and we're left with a power vacuum then and the
Yeah.
big bad.
Well,
Yeah.
at
Is that how you felt? Is that there was nobody there, so it's the Resistance wins? Or-
at that point, I thought the movie was such trash. I didn't know where it was going to
Yeah, we know
I was
at
just
that
well,
point-
At that point, it
At
might
that
as
point,
well.
I didn't care about 9.
Yeah,
At that point, I honestly, because of how bad 8 was, I didn't care about 9.
But that was the build-up, right? It was the unexpected move. So we've seen that before in other movies. For example, Endgame, right? Spoilers: when Thanos is killed in the first 10 minutes of the movie. Granted, I think Endgame did it better than what this Star Wars did here. But I think that's what they're going for, is that shock factor. Like, where do we go now?
Yeah, but well, if you're going to use Endgame as an example, I don't think you really can, because we had an entire movie of Infinity War where we got to see Thanos and see him fight and see like we were not craving to see Thanos do anything. We had seen
Right.
him do stuff
Right.
all through the phases. Then we saw him come in and we saw him actually win. We saw him be incredible in battle, and then that happened.
And own
sure, it was-
every Avenger.
Yeah, and
Own
sure, it was
every
shocking.
single one.
It was shocking when he got his head cut off. That was very shocking. But it was okay. Like, I didn't feel like I had been let down by Thanos because we had seen so much of Thanos. Whereas in Snoke, when it happened in the theaters, I just remember sitting there and going like, I'm never going to see Snoke do anything.
Snoke is
That
a
stinks.
nonsense character.
He's not even like,
He's a
what's the
worthless
point of him?
character.
Yeah.
He was built up in 7 and even in the trailers to be
this big
ridiculously powerful and huge.
Yeah. Let's jump into our verdict real quickly and just kind of talk about what we would have done better and how we would have liked to see it live up to what we had hoped it would be as a Star Wars film. All right, so Andy, I mean, you don't really have a verdict in this other than you like the movie, right?
Yeah, I like the movie. I thought it worked well. The pieces that you've called out that were jarring and kind of pulled you out of it, I didn't have issue with, and I thought the theme and Rian Johnson's overall story worked well.
All right, well, that was a very short verdict. Logan, let's hear. What do you think about? What would you have changed? You could change one thing.
I will keep it to one thing.
I don't think you will, but
I
we'll
will
try.
do my best.
What's
I
one
will do
thing
my
you would
best.
change?
Here's Andy's point right here.
Yeah.
So many people who went and saw this film were pulled out by so many inconsistencies, and exactly what Andy had hit. This is not the film you want to see. And here's the thing. I actually hear what Andy is saying in that there are a lot of good pieces in what they were trying for, what Rian Johnson was trying for in this film, except for the fact that this is the 8th episode in a 9-episode film series. You don't make a change like this in episode 8 and destroy what has been built. This has been built over decades. So make the film that people want to see. Make this about the Skywalkers. Make this about their journey. They're going all the way from Anakin to Luke and Leia to now Ben, and make it about that. That's what people wanted. That's what they were looking for. That's why you get a bad score. And that's why people are furious with this film. And then, if you're going to change it, and this is what I will say, if you're going to change it, stick with it. My gosh, don't go flipping flopping in 7, 8, and 9 and have no idea where you're going with anything. Somebody has to take the reins here and know what the overarching storyline should look like.
Yeah, agreed. And if you're going to stick with the Skywalker saga, then pick one of the many Skywalkers that are in there that we can center around. Center around Ben, or center around Luke, keep him alive and allow him to play a bigger part into it, or bring Leia into it, or make Rey a Skywalker. I know people weren't really too happy about her being a Skywalker, but it would have been better in continuity-wise. And it's less about making it what the people want, as you mentioned, Logan, but it's about staying true to the source material. And that's what, at Legion, we talk about all the time, right? The more you stray from source material, the dicier it gets, not only because the source material is obviously something worth basing things on, but you also risk angering fans in a way that ruins the legacy of what could have been in this saga. All right, Andy, thank you so much.
So one final thought.
Yeah.
With that is that, so everything being said, I really enjoy The Last Jedi. I hope going forward in the Star Wars universe, I hope that they retcon this whole series.
Agreed.
They have
and
a
we
path
are
to
fully
do it.
in agreement on
Yes,
this.
they do. Yeah.
The stories aren't going to go anywhere. Like, it'll be a part of the universe, but they have a path through other material, specifically Star Wars Rebels, which you haven't seen the show, go watch it.
Oh, it's
awesome.
so good.
Watch Rebels.
There is season 4, an episode called The World Between Worlds, where they explore this dimension, this force dimension. The main character's Ezra, and he encounters Palpatine, and it's a manipulation of space and time. So he's able to go save Ahsoka Tano from a previous point in the series and save her life, and then drop her back in after her life had been saved at that point. And we know that Palpatine has access to this world between worlds, and so the theory that, and what I hope for, is that in the new Ahsoka series or series going forward, that they kind of explore this a little bit. They find Ezra, they go into this world between worlds, and they find Palpatine, because it's theorized that the way Palpatine survived the explosion of the second Death Star was he used his Sith power to enter the world between worlds and come out on Exegol. And so he, therefore, being saved. So the theory is that they go in, they find him, they battle him in the world between worlds, and they kill him. And now you've got a whole nother timeline started, because Palpatine doesn't exist. So the First Order cannot rise the same way that they did.
Yeah.
You will not have Rey, potentially. You won't have a lot of the characters in the new...
Did you say there's a way we can get rid of Rey? I will do anything.
I mean, in
to
reality,
get rid of Rey.
Palpatine's son already exists, so Rey probably will already exist. But you could bring her back as a Force sensitive and turn her dark now and have a completely different story with Rey.
There's what we were looking for.
That'd be good.
That's what we were looking for. And I mean, I agree with you. This is we were in complete disagreement on everything else, but I will agree with you on this. I hope they go that route and retcon this, and I hope they go about it that exact way, because here's the thing. Why introduce that if you don't use it?
Agreed.
Yep.
It's there, and it's definitely, we have characters still alive in the series and the shows, Mandalorian timeline, that have been in this dimension, so they know of it. They know it exists.
Yep.
They know Palpatine knew it existed,
and they know how to use it.
Yes, fix it.
Yeah, so it's there, and it would be great. I think there's a lot of potential there.
Because if they don't fix this, my children only know up through 6. They are not going to know 7, 8, 9. They absolutely not. They'll know the Mandalorian. They'll know Ahsoka, hopefully. But if they don't fix this, 7, 8, 9, nope, don't exist in my world.
What about the Star Wars holiday special? Will they know
that? They will not under any circumstance know that film.
You don't celebrate Life Day?
I do not.
Well,
happy Life Day.
Well, because tell me what Life Day is.
It's where we wear blood red robes, and we.
It's a celebration of life.
and come back to life? What happens there?
I'll tell you once you celebrate it.
Once I start, it's like I have to be in the club.
Part of the initiation.
Ah, got it.
First rule of Life Day is don't talk about that.
That's right. That's right. I'll take you to Kashyyyk one day. And
Let me know.
We'll
Let
show
me
you.
know.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Andy, for coming and joining us in this.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks, Legion. Hope to talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, awesome. We had a blast. All right, Legion fans, thank you so much for watching our second episode of the Star Wars Correction Saga, Episode 8. We had a blast going through this with Andy.
Last Jedi, baby.
Oh, man.
I cannot. I can't do it with this film anymore.
Well, we're done.
Well,
we never talk about it.
I don't ever want to speak of this film.
We're never
again.
going to. After we're done, after we hit the stop button on this, we're never going to speak about it.
I seriously question my life choices around all of these Star Wars films that just are absolutely atrocious.
Every time we record an episode, I question my life choices. But that's okay because we're in it now. We've dedicated ourselves to it, and it's a public service at this point.
At this point, we have to just warn people not to watch The Last Jedi.
Well, yeah, that's true.
No,
ever.
Don't listen. Go watch it.
Don't ever
no,
watch
don't do it. It's on Disney Plus, but if you are tempted to watch it, feel free to just
watch
cancel
anything
the
else.
subscription.
Feel free to watch anything else.
Yeah, go watch Star Wars Holiday Special 1978 instead. It's better.
You know what? Go watch it and let us know what you think about it.
There you go.
Yeah,
Right,
that's right,
drop
that's
it
right.
down
Leave it in
in
the
the comments. While we're talking about that, make sure you're looking out. We have new episodes out every Monday and Wednesday
Woo!
now.
Starting up our
So
WandaVision.
you've got some extra ways to be able to connect with us. Make sure you follow us, hit like and subscribe down below. Hit that bell so you know when new episodes are coming out. Also, if you can't wait to hear our melodious voices, make sure that you are joining us on Patreon. You can get early access to all of our episodes as well as behind the scenes work and some different artwork that's been released. Please, please, please join us there and you'll be able to get all of our information early.
Yeah, we would love your support, and thank you again just for joining us here for this, and we will see you guys next week. Same time, same place, same Legion.